One of my most frequent childhood memories is staring at this end credit scene. One look at this and I'm instantly transported back into 90s Midwest America on a fall evening after school while my mom is cooking in the kitchen. I'm not sure if I was too young to be watching Batman the Animated Series, but I can tell you I was young enough not to remember much of it, except for one scene, one haunting scene that has stuck with me my whole life.
It only needs one more component to complete the process.
I've been fortunate enough to go back and revisit Batman the Animated Series in my adult years, and I can confirm alongside the rest of nerd culture on YouTube that it still holds up. Out of all the animations that we are looking at today, this one resonates with me the most as the 90s kid cartoon. The Gothic noir aesthetic of Gotham City will always be permanently etched into my brain. Not only the appearance of the city and the characters, but just the look of each scene. There always seems to be an ominous black corner lurking in the background, giving a very dark and uneasy feeling to every frame. This may not come off as terrifying by today's standards, but for an early 90s kids show, this transformation was mind-bending. You go the entire episode only seeing shadows of a huge winged creature hearing apocalyptic hell-raising screeches, but you never catch a full glimpse of this monster. When he transforms unexpectedly right in front of Batman, my only thought was,
"Run, bitch! Run!"
This animated series was groundbreaking and is equally responsible for the Batman mania that took over America as Tim Burton's Batman. Man-Bat remains one of my favorite Batman villains solely because of this episode. He was featured in a deleted scene in Batman Forever, but unfortunately that's the closest we've ever had to a cinematic version of Man-Bat. I'm not sure if I was old enough to be watching Batman the Animated Series when it first came out, but I can tell you I was definitely not old enough to be watching The Simpsons. I was not even in first grade when I watched the famous episode Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1. It was the first time I was ever exposed to a gunshot wound that seemed real.
Hey man, are you okay?
Won't dignify that with response.
As I watched Mr. Burns stagger down the sidewalk clutching his stomach, the concepts of pain and suffering felt so tangible to me for the first time. But what really messed me up was the fact that this episode ended on a cliffhanger. It was almost an entire year later until it was revealed who shot Mr. Burns, the culprit being someone not a single person could guess, Maggie Simpson. Obviously, the whole thing was a giant misdirect and marketing ploy, a subversion of expectations, if you will. Except this one actually worked and was well executed because it was planned out collaboratively ahead of time. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is at my young age, I was left hanging for an entire year of my life, wondering what Simpson's character was a murderer. The concept that one of these characters that I looked up to could be a killer did not sit well with me. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Max the Janitor, and we're here to discuss some of the darkest and disturbing animated moments from the 90s and early 2000s. Let's set out some guidelines real quick. Rule number 1, this has to be an animated show. Rule number 2, only one episode per show. Rule number 3, the show had to have taken place between 1990 and 2010. That's a solid 20-year window. Rule number 4, I had to have actually seen it. I'm sure there's plenty of dark moments in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, but I've never seen it, so it's not on the list.
Your deck is just as weak and feeble as your grandfather.
My grandpa is a great man and a better duelist than you'll ever be.
Rule number 5, kids shows, young adult shows, and adult shows will all be included in this list. Rule number 6, it has to be dubbed and released in English. Rule number 7, if I missed anything, something you consider criminal that I left out, just leave it in the comments. I had to choose between hundreds of episodes, so there's a good chance there will be a part 2 to this video someday. So sit back, relax, take your mind off the dark world crumbling around outside, and indulge into the dark world crumbling inside your own childhood mind.
It's the green!
Let that child alone.
One of my favorite Family Guy episodes is a bottle episode. A bottle episode is when there are as few characters and sets as possible. They're originally done to save money because they are very cheap to make. But I think it also develops into a fun challenge for writers. Are you a good enough writer to put 2 characters in a room together and make that entertaining? Do you need constant set changes and multiple characters and props to keep the show going? Or are you capable of slowing the show down and getting a better understanding of who these characters really are? The answer for Family Guy is not for about a decade now, but back in 2010, Seth MacFarlane came out with an episode that trapped America in a bank vault with Brian and Stewie. But the real danger was the mounting tension of their friendship and the internal struggle for Brian to cope with his own existence.
Hey, Bri.
Yeah?
How come you have a gun?
I don't want to be your guilty virgin, Brian.
I don't want to lose you.
You broke my heart.
No, you really hurt me, Brian.
What sets this episode apart from any other Family Guy episodes is there are no cutaway gags and no music. The cutaway gags may sound like the surprising part, but a lot of people don't realize that Seth takes his musical scoring just as seriously. So for him to leave out music entirely set the stage for the eerie and unmoving sequence of events that play out between Brian and Stewie. The two get drunk and get into an argument. Tensions blow over after a gun is misfired in the room, and the next day Stewie asks Brian to tell him the truth about why he keeps a gun in his safety deposit box.
I keep it in case I ever want to commit suicide, okay?
Wow. Oh my God.
This network television talking dog we've known since 1999 had secretly been struggling with depression, bordering on the brink of suicide due to his anthropomorphism, and the clues were there the entire time. Anthropomorphism is giving human traits to non-human characters, like a talking mouse or a talking sponge, or in Family Guy's case, a talking dog.
Stewie, what's happening to you?
I think my timeline is being erased. The timeline where you died no longer exists. Merry Christmas, Brian. Hey, who are you talking to out here?
A pretty awesome guy.
This episode ends in a peaceful manner of Brian reading Stewie David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. The novel is referred to as a turning point in Dickens' work, marking the point of separation between novels of youth and novels of maturity.
Of this classic action-adventure. Disney's Aladdin. Quality entertainment software flying to your Super Nintendo Entertainment System from Capcom.
There's something about old school animation that can be a little unsettling as an adult. Of course, when I was a kid, this was just a normal Rugrats episode. Until we get to this part. There's a lot of things going on that make this scene so terrifying. The color tones switch from bright, vibrant, contrasting colors to dark blue, purple, and gray, pulling you into this dreamlike state with Angelica. I never really liked Angelica growing up, but when her parents can't remember who she is, something about that terrified me. The idea that your parents could just forget you.
Who are you?
It's me, Angelica.
Who?
Angelica, your daughter.
Oh yeah, our old kid. I remember now.
Although she was allowed to stay, it feels like she no longer lives there. You feel like she no longer lives anywhere. And at any moment, her parents could pick up and move and completely forget her. The thought of Angelica being left behind was something my tiny brain struggled to grasp. But that wasn't even the worst part of this otherworldly encounter. As Angelica's brother reveals himself, I was met face to face with one of the most unnerving babies in media existence.
So you're the new baby, huh?
That's right. I'm the new baby. I'm the new baby and you're the old baby, see? And you better get something straight right off the bat. There ain't room in this house for the both of us.
The likeness of this disgusting baby is based on Edward G. Robinson, an actor during Hollywood's golden age.
Simon Pete could scare him, but I ain't no Sam. Sam is through. Now you're through, too.
It's not just the way this baby looks and talks, it's that our brains are shocked awake by the horrifying discovery at the same time as Angelica. The creators use something called vocal dissonance. As we walk up towards the crib, we hear all the normal sounds coming from a baby, so we expect to see a normal baby. But when you see the face and hear the real voice of this creature, it's the opposite of anything we could have imagined. The rest of the dream plays out too fast to really even comprehend what's going on. Within seconds, Angelica is met with this horrific monster that is her new brother, to being shoved in the closet by her mother. Before we're even given a second to grieve, things just go from bad to worse. The pace that this evil baby moves puts classic horror villains to shame. He has a total of one conversation with her warning to leave, and by their second run-in, he makes good on his promise. A frightening chase ensues around the surreal world that is no longer Angelica's house, culminating in Angelica meeting the fate she was trying to escape. The Umbara arc is my second favorite arc in the Clone Wars series. Something about the atmosphere on the planet lets you know never to let your guard down. That feeling of dread comes to the surface when Anakin is whisked away back to Coruscant with zero explanation, and the clones and viewer are left with Anakin's replacement, General Krell. As Anakin's ship disappears into the distance, we get our first taste of what type of leader General Krell is.
I find it very interesting, Captain, that you are able to recognize the value of honor for a clone.
He talks to Rex like he isn't even a person, refusing even to call him by his name and only by his number.
Do I make myself clear, CT-7567?
He considers all the clones disposable soldiers and refuses to see the man behind the helmet. There's very strong themes of racism and slavery in this relationship.
A planet cost us men, not clones. Men!
Each encounter with Rex and General Krell adds to the mounting tension between them. The battles get bloodier and bloodier as the men of the 501st lose their lives from the General's reckless and careless battle plans. Although I will admit those reckless battle plans lead to some of the best action in the Clone Wars series. One of the more battle-focused episodes of The General was directed by Apocalypse Now editor Walter Murch, and he does an excellent job showing the brutality the General puts these clones through. This arc takes on a life of its own, and it's far superior to any themes or stories from the Disney trilogy.
He may have had some victories, but have you seen his casualty numbers? More troopers have been killed under his command than anyone else. That's the price of war, Fives. We're soldiers. We have a duty to follow orders, and if we must, lay down our lives for victory. Do you believe that? Or is that what you were engineered to think?
It challenges the viewers and the clones to ask what are the true values of the Republic and the Jedi leading this war? What is the true purpose of being a clone? Over 180 clone troopers are killed on screen in this arc. We see Hardcase sacrifice his life for the mission, and then Fives and Jesse are ordered to be executed for assisting him. General Krell sets up this execution to send a message to the clones. Even if you risk your life in this battle, I will execute you if you disobey my orders. The clones are left confused on what the right thing to do is, some of them experiencing their first existential crisis.
We are not a bunch of unthinking droids! We are men! We must be trusted to make the right decisions! Especially when the orders we are given are wrong!
This all culminates in the clones deciding against killing their own brothers.
Doing the right thing, Dogma. Because if this is how soldiers are rewarded for heroic actions, then one day, every man in this battalion may face a similar fate.
Until General Krell tricks them into doing it anyway. The General devises a plan to have the troopers from the 501st and the troopers from the 212th kill each other by giving both squads false information that the enemy is dressed in their armor. It's not until Captain Rex catches a glimpse of one of his dead enemies that he realizes he is looking at himself.
What? Everyone, stop firing! We're shooting at our own men! They're not Amarants! They're clones! Take off your helmets! Show them you're not the enemy!
Rex takes off his helmet and without question runs into the middle of a firefight to save as many lives as he can.
Look! We clones! We're all clones!
When the firing stops and all the clones stand shocked in disbelief, Rex collapses on the battlefield, attempting to grasp the horror of knowing they were murdering their own brothers. The conflict results in the unexpected death of Waxer. He dies crying as he realizes the awful truth that they were set up by the General. The clones arrest the General for crimes against the Republic, and one of the clones executes him after he confesses that he used the clones as puppets in his own scheme. The Republic was murdering and conquering the Umbarans because they left the Republic, but the Republic never should have been there in the first place because they are being manipulated by Palpatine. The clones run into a battle and end up murdering each other, a battle that never should have happened because they were being manipulated by General Krell. The message of this episode being that war is absolute hell, and the worst of humanity can be found at the top pulling the strings for their own twisted aims. A genocidal agenda that doesn't care about the billions of people killed, fighting, or affected by their war.
Evil has evolved. Resident Evil 4 for Nintendo GameCube. Rated M for mature.
I'd rather fight and die than watch this all happen.
The History of Trunks. Friday, September 12th at 6. We're gonna need some more heroes.
Originally released in Japan in 1993 and then dubbed into English in 2000, The History of Trunks is a nightmarish tale into an alternate future where Goku and all the other Z fighters have died. The episode opens up with a gritty hip-hop intro, letting you know this special is going to be a little different from normal DBZ episodes.
Dragon Ball Z.
Sometimes the American version of anime scores can be a lot worse than the original Japanese version. And while I'm not saying this American dub is better, something about it brings back nostalgia for me because that was the original way I viewed it. I mean, just listen to the first few seconds of the opening shot of the American version. I will say the American version had a lot more cheesy, unnecessary dialogue and name-calling.
Come back here, you speedy little devils!
In the Japanese version, the androids are better painted as two ruthless killers instead of two angsty young adults.
Do what we say we're going to do. It's only common sense.
I know, but he got away. Get it?
Yeah.
Let's take a few pot shots. We might get lucky.
Cool.
Just look at how much more menacing the androids are here when there is no dialogue. But for the sake of rule number 6, we'll be talking about the American version of the history of Trunks. This special episode opens with Gohan and the other Z-Fighters witnessing the death of Goku. This unexpected death from a virus destroys the morale of the Z-Fighters. For Goku, the most powerful being on planet Earth, to be killed by an invisible virus, the concept even shakes Vegeta to his core.
Goku's gone! Kakarot. No.
But that's not the moment that we are here to talk about today. The moment that shook me to my core was the murder of Gohan. Something about seeing Gohan grow up as an adult and fully encompass everything his father stood for was moving. Knowing even without Goku's guidance, Gohan would fill his father's shoes to be the defender of the Earth. Future Gohan bears a nasty looking scar across his face, and in one of their encounters with the androids, he loses his arm. Everything about this Gohan in the apocalyptic future is intimidating, terrifying, and badass, but at the same time, he still has the gentle heart he always had. There's no better scene to encompass that than the moments leading up to Gohan's last stand.
Sorry about that, Trunks, but I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if anything happened to you.
As Gohan fights the androids to defend the Earth, he's met with these daunting words from Android 17.
This thunderstorm is a perfect backdrop for your demise.
Watching the brutal murder of Gohan destroyed the last of my childhood innocence. And then 9/11 happened and I really had to grow up. But the most brutal part of this special was watching Trunks find Gohan's dead body lying face down in the streets. The viewer unable to distinguish the difference between the rain or tears running down Trunks' face, climaxing in one of the greatest Super Saiyan transformations of all time. Dragon Ball Super tried to recreate it, but it doesn't even come close to the original version.
Not understand.
There are those who said this day would never come.
Let me paint the scene for you. The year was 2005 and I was sitting in the backseat of my family's Honda minivan on my way to a baseball game. To pass the time on my hour-long drive, I brought my 120 gigabyte iPod video completed with a pirated version of the newest season of South Park, and it went something like this. As I stood up to exit the car, my knees felt weak and my vision felt blurry. While walking into the ball game, I wasn't sure if I felt sick to my stomach from the long car ride or watching the animal blood orgy, but looking back at it, I'm pretty sure it was the latter. There was no joy in the baseball game that day for me. I basically just stared blankly at the field, trying to get that awful image of animals having sex out of my head. South Park had been one of my favorite shows for most of my life, and while being shocking and appalling was nothing new for South Park, something about the sudden satanic turn of events caught me off guard, enough to make me feel physically ill. This episode was actually a difficult one for the creators to produce. Matt Stone and Trey Parker described the 8th season of South Park as the year from hell. It was the year they directed, wrote, and starred in a season of South Park and the hit movie Team America World Police. And by the time they got to this episode, they claimed they were out of ideas. Several days of being unsure what to make led to the perfectly rational thought of spoofing John Denver and the Muppets Christmas Holiday Special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Event Horizon, all in one episode. I tried to Google if there were any other instances of cartoon animal orgies on TV, but I was met with some very disturbing results and decided not to pursue it any further. Well guys, thanks for stopping by and spending some time in the janitor closet. Can't say too much about what's going on right now, so I can stay within YouTube's guidelines, but I will say this. Seems to me that we're all living in the beginning stages of the first episode of The Walking Dead. So if real life is anything like the show, the lessons I've learned are: murder anyone you don't trust. Have pointless drawn out metaphorical conversations about how life is different now. Killing kids is okay if they're annoying or as a cost-saving measure to prevent them from negotiating a new contract for more money as an adult. Our current reality is boring and people can actually live more fulfilling and stimulating lives when their every decision is the difference between life and death. Never work towards a specific goal or have an end game in mind. Just keep the series going for as long as possible until no one is watching anymore. Walking around with a bomber jacket and a baseball bat while being a sexist is the new normal. If you have the chance to escape from this train wreck via helicopter, take it and never look back. Thank you all my patrons. You guys rock. Nikolai, Jacob, Caleb, Dakota. See you next time, Janitor Squad.
Nobody's gonna save and oh my, you're my broken love. So come on, let me show you how.